You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. Conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their missions through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media.
All right, Jenny, today's topic, using a DSP to plan digital marketing.
Yeah, I love this. We're not really telling our clients what is a DSP, what is programmatic. I mean, we will answer those questions, but I think everyone listening or nonprofit attractions for the most part know what programmatic media is, or they at least know there is a line item on their plan for programmatic media or programmatic display. But we're really going to talk about what you can and can't do in 2023, going into 2024. Today, what's realistic, and then also how we can really use the tool for planning. Because I think this is where maybe a lot of agencies or even advertisers think they don't have access to some of this behind the scenes data. But there's a lot of really useful information that you can get from a DSP to actually plan your media and set your budgets right up front versus just saying, well, the minimum spend is X, so that's how much I'm putting towards it.
Yeah, and to make sure that we do have the most up-to-date information, we actually brought in a DSP rep. His name is Jake Ponce de Leon. He's from Simplify. Let's get into it. All right, we've got Jake from Simplify joining the Marketing Attractions podcast. Jake, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Great, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the time and for me to share a little bit more about the programmatic space today.
Absolutely. So why don't you give like a 30-second, 60-second intro on you and yourself and Simplify?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Jake Ponce de Leon. I work for Simplify. I work in the programmatic space on the vendor side, specifically DSPs, and I've worked for several in the past, and I work for one now.
Oh, you said a magic word there, DSP. So why don't we, set the stage, get some of these terms out of the way. What exactly is a DSP?
So DSP, like all the other pronouns we have, has a definition to it. It's demand side platform. And that's just simply a platform for advertisers to buy on for digital programmatic advertising.
So Simplify would be one of them. Do you have any competitors in the space?
Yeah, other competitors in the space would be Basis, Trade Desk, Stack Adapt. There's probably about 10 major competitors in the space for us in the DSP space.
Got it. So this is a web-based, I'm going to a website, account name, put in my credit card or do some type of billing, and I can execute ad campaigns right from this interface.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, there's a ton of different options on the market, but some are self-serve where you log in and your hands are on the keyboard and setting up the targeting and the budgets and the flight dates. And then there's also options on the market where someone will manage it for you. And so they are still using a DSP. You're just simply using some of their workforce to help you out if you don't have the bandwidth. Okay.
Let's define programmatic. What you got?
Yeah. So there's a couple, I'm sure there's a lot of pre-thought of definitions out there. For myself, I think of programmatic as any program that you can use to buy and execute media. And that could be in the TV space, the digital space, the radio space. There's a ton of different programmatic platforms that are out there, but anything that's really making your life easier when executing a media campaign can be considered programmatic.
Well, I know Jenny knows that I used to be a TV rep. We used to get our buys with a fax machine.
I don't know if I call it a fax machine programmatic.
That's not programmatic? Okay. All right. All right. So, it's 2024. What exactly can we buy with the DSP? Like, what is the reality nowadays?
Yeah, so DSPs, they started with just kind of display advertising, and some people might have like a predisposition in that it's only display, but we can buy display now. We have native, which is kind of the cousin of display. Pre-roll video, connected TV is available, so any kind of streaming television that's out there. And then we can also do digital audio and bits and pieces as well. So the breadth and depth of the inventory has grown a ton over the last 10, 15 years.
And for our audience, we're talking about local attractions, zoos, aquariums, gardens, museums. I mean, Jenny, were you typically executing buys on a market level, maybe even tighter, maybe a little broader? What can we really buy, Jake, with the DSP, like on a local level?
Yeah, on a local level, you just have to be a little more careful than on a national level just because of the scale that's available to you. So you can still buy all of that inventory that I've listed on a local level. It's just a matter of the depth of targeting that you can use nowadays. So I can't, find, families who drive a red van and have 2 dogs and 3 bicycles at a local level. But if you're looking for more of like a household income or people who enjoy leisurely activities or museums, something a little bit more of a broad category, that's what you can buy at a local level effectively currently.
And I think we've had some previous discussions around like local media, traditional media versus digital media. And I think in many cases, you have a lot of opportunity to reach still a relatively large audience with digital, but there's still I think if you can kind of talk to us a little bit, are you going to be able to run streaming audio on a local level through a DSP and reach as many people as you can with terrestrial radio on a local level, or streaming TV digitally on a local level versus broadcast TV? Because a lot of the data that's coming out is showing more people are going to streaming audio, more people are going to streaming TV, but can you really tap into them from a advertising perspective on a local level and still get that same reach?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And as always, there's a little bit of it depends on the back end of that. But really, if we're using the same kind of approach as terrestrial radio and linear television, where we're just buying like a geographical area, typically we can get a little bit more specific. So instead of buying all of Tampa or all of Jacksonville, you can buy the 2, 3, 4 zip codes that maybe meet a little bit closer to your attraction or that have a more relevant audience to your attraction. So you can get more specific. But I would say, again, that the targeting's got to be a little bit more broad as well. So just double, triple, quadruple checking the scale is always going to be important. So, we can buy 3, 4 zip codes and probably deliver really well, but we can't, again, find families with 6 kids and drive 3 minivans and have 2 dogs because there's only 3 of those, right? Maybe close to your attraction. And then we're really fighting for inventory and delivery. So
treat it treat it the same way then, right? You're buying traditional broadly, you'd be buying digital broadly on that local level.
Yeah,
too.
You've got it dead on. Just keep it really broad and we can get more specific geographically and keep it the same as far as targeting goes.
Well, okay, let's just keep setting the stage here though. What can we buy? What can't we access with the DSP?
Yeah, also a great question. The biggest hot button right now is in the connected TV space because there's probably hundreds of apps at this point that are streaming content. So a lot of those hot names or household brand names that are paid subscriptions, like a HBO Max or a Netflix or even some of Hulu is not available through a DSP or have programmatic inventory available. But if you think of anything that's really super ad supported, so free advertising, streaming television is a huge one. Or anything that has even just limited ads as well can be bought through PMP. But the big things to kind of avoid are those really, I would call super premium names within the streaming space that have paid subscriptions currently. So if you're paying $9.99 or $14.99 for that streaming app, we're likely unable to get any inventory on it. Whereas if you're just able to click on it and get free content, that's typically what you're going to be able to buy within that streaming television space currently.
And this term walled gardens, can I buy Meta? Can I buy YouTube?
Yeah, also a great question. Any of the social media apps, I would say. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of those are going to be native to the platform. So if I want to buy Facebook inventory or Instagram inventory, I'm going to have to go directly to them. And same thing goes with Amazon as well. So if you think of kind of the big 4 tech companies out there, those are all going to be, as Ryan mentioned, walled gardens, and you're going to have to go to them directly to get any sort of inventory. We fall kind of in between the lines of Google and social is the way that I explain it. So Google, they are the biggest tech company out there, and you're going to have to go to them directly for anything that they own. And then for social, same thing. That's kind of their own monster and own platforms you're going to buy on. But anything that falls in between, so if you're reading an article on ESPN or looking up a holiday recipe, that's where we're going to be able to get that inventory for you.
Excellent. All right, so let's get into the meat here. How can we use a DSP to help develop our digital media plan or overall plan? I know we talked about some ideas on how to do this. Fire away.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is just there's a ton of planning tools built into DSPs, not just Simplify. All of them out there have some sort of planning tool at your disposal, and They allow you to either plug in the audience you're looking for or the geographical area you're looking to target. And they'll either provide household levels or device or the amount of devices that are available to target, or some sort of number that you can use to plan off of. And then depending on that number, we can do a daily budget, weekly budget, monthly budget. But there's a ton of tools out there built into the DSPs currently that at least give you and point you in the right direction of how much we should be allocating to different audiences, different inventory sources, different flights, things like that. And there's even tools that help you with CPMs as well. So for, deep in December around the holidays, it's going to tell you to bid a little bit higher versus maybe the lull of June or July in the summer. We can bid and be a little bit more effective with our CPMs and costs of media as well. So just there's a whole number out there, but household numbers, device numbers, reach and frequency, all different things that we can plug into our DSP and be able to get some sort of result that is informing us where we should put our budgets.
Jenny, I'm thinking, I'm going into Facebook or Meta, and I'm setting up a promoted post campaign, or I'm in my Google Ads account and I'm tweaking my search campaign. Each of those platforms have some sort of campaign planner. Jake is telling us this is similar to what Simplify or any other DSP could do.
Yeah, I think this is important because when we think about the planning process, the planning and buying process, that can live with different people. So you have different people who are building that strategy, the initial channel mix, and then it gets handed to a buying team, and whether that's a broadcast buying team or whether that's a digital buying team, who are going out and trying to execute something. But if those teams aren't talking during the planning phase and they aren't using these audience numbers or these household numbers like Jake just referred to within the platforms, you could be building out a plan or a channel mix based off of like research and survey data from a year ago to determine that, hey, everyone's watching streaming TV, so I'm going to put all my money into streaming TV versus broadcast. And then you give that money to your vendor or try to plug it into that DSP, and then you realize you can't actually spend that money. So if you're not utilizing the audience sizes or the impression counts to be able to build that plan out in the beginning, you're going to probably have difficulty actually executing that plan at the end. And I think sometimes that gets covered up with just the ability to optimize and move money around, because a lot of times maybe you didn't utilize those numbers to build that plan in the first place. So I think it's crucial. I think as you're building out a media plan, you should be asking like how these budgets were determined, right? So it's going to be a combination, hopefully, of research that showed the audience was there, but then actual data within a platform to show that audience size, so that you can kind of look across the board and see what the audience size is or total impression count is in all of these channels, to see why you're spending more on one channel versus the other. And of course, objectives matter too, right? They each serve a different purpose, but understanding just the size and what you can spend, I think, is always a really helpful kind of planning tool when you're going through the channels to know, should I only be spending $2,000 or should I be spending $10,000, $50,000 in this channel?
You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast, conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their mission through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media. Attend Media is a media planning and buying agency specializing in zoos, aquariums, gardens, and museums. For more information, please visit attend.media. Now, back to Ryan and Jenny.
Okay, so we've pooled this data. We've dived into the DSP. We've layered on some targeting options. We've got an idea, whether it be on a household or an impression level, what we can actually do in the real world, in our market. Jake, how do we get this data from you or the DSP to the planner? Like, can you talk about like best practices on getting everybody talking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key word, right? Just get everybody talking, and whether that's having a Zoom call or open Slack channel or an email thread with everybody who's on it. And that's somebody who's hands-on keyboard in the DSP that's going to be buying it, whether that's the person within the agency or somebody from our team that's managing for you. Having somebody who has a holistic view of all the budgets, so across programmatic, linear, radio, newspaper, all the channels that you're buying, having somebody that's savvy to that. And then I would say, somebody who's just also like the middleman to that and making sure that everything's getting trafficked accordingly. So just get everybody one way or another talking and on a call, and that could be a biweekly check-in, a weekly one, again, an email thread that's just ongoing. But I think just communication across multiple people is key. Within the agency too, if they have a planning team and an execution team, making sure both of those people are on the call as well. And then also making sure everybody is using the same kind of source of truth. So if we are pulling in impression level or a household number or whatever it might be, that data is the middle point for everybody, and that we're not pulling different data from different data sources, and the media planning team is using one and the media execution team is using a different data source, and then the overall planner is using a third one, and then all of a sudden our numbers are conflicting, and then we have to almost start over from square one and figure out which number we're going to use. So 2 points there: have one source of truth as far as the data and research goes, and then 2, find an open source of communication, whether that's a Zoom call, email thread, Slack channel, to make sure everybody communicates effectively across all the teams.
I can hear Jenny going, "Oh my gosh, well, this needs to happen in the planning process, right?" Jenny, you want to speak to that?
Well, I think that's kind of what we were talking about before, right? That's got to be happening up front in the planning, but then also ongoing as the campaign's actually launching. Things change. All of a sudden, the things you thought you were going to track or could track might change. The objectives could, hopefully they don't shift, but they could. So just making sure everyone on all sides is all up to date on what's happening. And then once the campaigns actually launch, that we're all still focused on the same thing like Jake was talking about. So I think one of the other kind of tricky pieces is there's a lot of data available, and you go in with one kind of main metric to focus on, but then you see all these other shiny objects and want to try to pull a lever multiple different ways. So just staying focused on what the end result is and not making too many decisions too quickly to make changes in the plan, but letting it work the way it was intended to work and to support the objectives that it was created for, I think are important as well too. But I think that's, kind of another question. If we talk about the data and all the things that you can look at, Jake, what type of data can you provide in reports in addition to things like click-through rates, completed view rates, conversion rates? What are some other things that your team looks at that you can also share with clients too in reporting?
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit more specifically to Simplify here because that's the company that I work for and the DSP that I know best. And I look at reports daily, most likely. I'll speak a little bit more to that. But for us, we also pull domain lists, and that could be a connected TV domain list or even just a normal web browser domain list to see how each individual website and each individual CTV domain is performing, and we'll optimize and report against that. For us, we're big advocates of geofencing, so we can see how each individual geofence is performing as well. So we'll take a look at that. And then we're also just looking at budget fulfillment. So how much of the budget for yesterday or the day before did we spend, and making sure that we're pacing really well, or if a line item is under pacing or underperforming, where can we possibly move that budget? So just looking at the main KPIs across as many ways that we can splice and dice it. But two of the big ones specifically in attractions would be the geofences that we're using, and then the domains is pretty much universal across all campaigns. So those are two big ones. And then the other one, we have a keyword search tool specifically built into our DSP. And so similar to Google AdWords, we can see how keywords perform. And that's another way in which we can take 50, 75 different data points and optimize across it as well. So there's a lot of different ways. I would say those are probably the top 3 different things that we're using. And then the main one being that budget fluidity. So how are the actual just overall tactics performing? So if there's 3 tactics performing, are we getting the cost per action, or are we getting the click-through rate that we want? And if we're not, hey, can we move $50, $100, $200 to hopefully move that needle in the right direction? So a lot of different ways, but I would say those are the couple of the main ones that we look at.
Jake, going back to the planning stuff, let's say we have an aquarium that has an in-house team. Maybe they don't work with an agency. Maybe they're not as experienced in working directly with DSPs. Like, what are some things that you need to get from the client, the advertiser in this case, in order to put together, whether it be just recommendations or answer some of the questions that they should be asking in terms of what's really possible? What's the availability of inventory out there?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing is, what is the objective? Is it just we're trying to drive website traffic because there's an event coming up? Is it that we're trying to do ticket sales because we've got a one-time event where we're bringing some sharks in or whatever it might be? So the number one thing is the objective, and then the number two thing would be, what's your key audience that you're looking to target? Is it families as your number one audience? Is it couples that you're trying to get? Is it date night? What's the audience that you find most to attend these events? And that can be 2 or 3 different audiences. That's totally fine, but we need to know what the audience is. You can't just come to us and say, we want to sell more tickets. And it's like, well, what's the time frame? What's the objective? Is there a specific price point? So if the tickets are $50 a piece, that's important to us as well, because we need to make sure that return on ad spend is effective for the campaign. There's just as much information as the client can provide is always better. Better or more is better. But yeah, those are just a couple of the baseline things. Also, flight date's really important. So are we spending this budget in a month? Are we spending it in a week? Are we spending it for the rest of the year? That's important as well. So all of those things are really important when trying to plan a campaign. Luckily, most DSPs will do planning for free. So if you reach out to them, they're happy to put together a baseline proposal for them. But again, having those couple things in mind is important. And I'll also say, just like, have an idea of how much you want to spend on programmatic. Saying you have no budget really doesn't help us at all, because we'll put together $1 million plan and then all of a sudden you only have $1,000, and that's a big change in the proposal that we put together. So it doesn't have to be we have exactly $25,000, but hey, we're looking to spend $5,000 to $10,000, or we're looking to spend $10,000 to $20,000, and that at least gets us in the ballpark of where we can put budgets and how many different tactics we might need to employ for a single campaign.
Good stuff. Okay, so think about the clients out there that you're working with. What are some things that they're doing now that they probably shouldn't be doing? Or what are some things that you wish they would be doing, specifically within their campaigns? What are kind of some of the do's and don'ts that you're seeing?
Yeah, for do's, I would say ask more questions. I feel like there's a lot of times that we might be providing reports and they don't know what things are and they're kind of afraid to ask, or seem dumb to the vendor, or seem uneducated. We're totally fine with questions. There's 1,000 different acronyms, and if you don't know what one is, just ask us. Or why are we optimizing towards something? I would say just ask more questions. Or if the report is too in depth, ask us to just simplify it down and make it easier for you to understand, so that you can portray it not only to your team, but probably your boss or somebody else on the team that needs to understand it even at a simpler level than we do. And then the second do, I would say, just be open to fluidity across the campaign. So just because we go in with a plan from day one or the start of the flight doesn't mean that we need to stick to it for the full 30 days, 60 days, 90 days of the campaign. You need to be open to moving budgets from one campaign to another, or one line item to another, or one tactic to another. You need to be open to new ideas if we're not performing where we need to. So we might have 3 tactics that we really like, and I'm not saying it happens all the time, but there are certainly campaigns where they kind of fall dead off the start. So we need to come up with another idea, and that's okay to add a 4th campaign, or even turn a specific targeting tactic off if it's just not performing well. So just being fluid and on the move. And then the last one I would say is just kind of trust your vendor. So make sure that you're vetting them fully and that you trust to work with them, because they're going to need to make some decisions for you along the way that you might not that you don't need to approve every second, and you don't need to micromanage. A lot of DSPs have a lot of smart people and they know what they're doing. So just making sure that you like the vendor and DSP that you pick. So when it comes time to decide whether to get rid of a domain or a geofence, that you trust them to make that small decision that probably can impact the campaign pretty well, and you don't have to micromanage that campaign in the background. So those are 3 do's. Don'ts, I would say, don't come to the table without an idea of a budget that you want to spend, because if you say I don't have an idea, I'm going to put together a $50,000, $100,000 budget proposal, and then we have to back it all the way down, and then we do double the work that way. So even if it's $1,000, let us know it's $1,000, and we can come up with something that's effective and makes sense for that budget. And then the other one is, don't just activate a campaign without research, like we've been talking about. So just because CTV is hot does not mean that we can spend $75,000 in Beaufort, Georgia on connected TV. We need to make sure that we can deliver effectively, and then make sure that it also performs effectively for the campaign. So I would say just do a little bit of research, or again, a lot of DSPs do planning for free. So make sure that they're doing their due diligence to make sure that the campaign will deliver in full or will be effective for the budget and the location that you're trying to target. So that's two other ones that I would do for don'ts. But yeah.
See, you give a minute for the rep to rip a little bit, and he fires away. Here's what I got you down for. You're saying ask questions, specifically when it comes to reporting. Be open to your campaign manager's advice on moving tactics. I can see Jenny going, let me think about that one. Number 3, you've got trust your vendors. And I get that. I mean, these guys are in the platform day in and day out. Number 4, coming to the table with a budget. If you are going to rely on your DSP to actually do the plan for you, having some sense of a budget gets them headed in the right direction. And then I love the 5th one, doing the research. Don't just send that budget down the line that came out of nowhere. You can dream it, but the reality might look a lot different.
Yeah. And even if you do research, right, then the DSP can at least double check, or whoever's planning can double check that number. So just making sure everybody's aligned with the planning process and the research that makes sense for the campaign.
Jenny, from the planning side, from the agency side, anything to add to that list?
I think it's just be careful with slicing your budgets too thin. We kind of talked about this with social in the past, but social has the problem of no minimums. Therefore, it gets a lot of leftover dollars or really tiny test budgets. So sometimes we see that transfer also in programmatic, but just being careful that you're not trying to run several tactics or audiences with a really small budget and slicing and dicing it too thin. And I think just being careful with the targeting. I think for nonprofit attractions, cultural attractions, a lot of times you are trying to reach, your targeting is more the market itself, right? Of course, you've got maybe parents or a particular, age group that you're trying to reach, but it's a relatively broad audience. So try not to layer too much targeting to, define who that audience is. And I think that's going to give you more fluidity in terms of being able to optimize towards the best performance. But yeah, I think that the budgets and targeting are kind of 2 areas that we watch out for.
Yeah, with the slicing of dicing of too thin, I know a lot of the attractions that you guys are marketing to and working with, they want their budgets to be effective, right? We're not just throwing $1,000 out there to throw $1,000 out there. We want return on ad spend. We want visitors. So if you have a small budget, it's not going to be the sexiest of plans out there with all these cool targeting tactics. We need to keep it, lean and effective to maybe some tactics that we know historically perform really well for cost per action or offline attribution or whatever it might be. So yeah, if you have a small budget, 1 or 2 tactics that we historically know work well is going to be your best move, as opposed to 7 tactics and it's really cool geofencing and addressable and all these crazy tactics that sound good in theory, but when it comes to small budgets aren't as effective.
We say keep it disciplined. So
yeah,
I love that.
I love that. That's great.
All right. So Jake, wrapping this up, tell us, why should zoos, museums, aquariums, gardens be looking at Simplify to be their go-to DSP, and be sure to include a way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Simplify, again, it is a DSP. We offer managed service and self-service. So depending on how your team is structured, there's definitely work models for you. And then we have a lot of tactics that work at that hyperlocal or DMA level, whether it's geofencing competing attractions or other attractions that the company might own. And we can also attribute both online and offline conversions. So if you want ticket sales online, where I go through a whole cart process and get to a thank you page, we can track those for you. Or if someone just simply sees a connected TV ad on their television and walks up to the front gate, we can track that as well. So really great attribution pieces. And again, we can plan at that hyperlocal or DMA level to let you know, okay, we can spend this amount, or here's what is going to be effective based on the households that we found for your target audience. So great planning tools, easy work model, and even better attribution for Simplify.
Excellent.
To get in contact with us, the easiest way would be through our website. It's simply.fi, simpli.fi, or just Google Simplify DSP, and that comes up as well. Biggest thing, it ends in FI, not FY. So That's the easiest way to get in contact with us. And there's a ton of information on that website, a contact us button, all that good stuff is on there as well.
Jake, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was so much fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. If you have a suggestion for a topic or would like to be a guest on the show, please visit our website at marketingattractionspodcast.com.